Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Strap yourselves in, get comfortable. This is going to be a long one. Let's get started.
Are you able to understand the irony of responding to the perceived political correctness of the left with exasperated reactionary hypersensitivity of your own?
This has got to be one of the most pointless questions I think I've ever heard. That's like saying, isn't it ironic how we responded to Hitler's violent military campaign in Europe with a violent military campaign of our own? What are you trying to say? That anti-SJWs are just as hypersensitive as SJWs are perceived as being? If that's the case, then you're simply wrong. When was the last time you saw an anti-SJW figure block comments, block people, dismiss disagreeing arguments by labeling people as racist or misogynistic, riot in the streets, or try to prevent feminist meetings from happening? If you think all those actions are only perceived on the part of SJWs, then you are simply an idiot.
What is it with you people and skulls?
What's your point? I've been sharing my trophy collection with a group of anti-SJW individuals for the past year or so. Don't judge me.
How do you define right-wing?
The conservative or reactionary section of a political party or system?
Anti-SJWs often have an aversion to being labelled as right-wing.
Okay.
Yet they regularly defend the right and bash the left.
You don't seem to understand that it's possible to defend the right wing while attacking the left wing and at the same time not belong to the right wing.
Therefore, why is being labelled right-wing a bad thing to you?
The only way that the statement behind that question would hold any real power is if every single anti-SJW who defended the right wing from the left passionately excluded themselves from being categorized as right-wing, which is not the case.
And if it's because right-wing is used as a pejorative, can you not see how labelling people as SJWs or regressives is also pejorative?
I think most people on my side who don't like being called right-wing don't like being called that because they are not actually right-wing. Whether or not the word is meant as a pejorative is irrelevant. If you're going to be a passionate supporter or opponent of any ideology, it kind of goes without saying that you have to develop a thick skin as far as pejoratives are concerned.
Rather than telling people you disagree with to drink bleach, wouldn't it be more productive for you to have an actual conversation about the issues you feel matter? Or is it just easier to do the bleach thing?
You got that saying backwards. You don't tell other people to drink bleach, you say that you are going to drink bleach in response to the utter stupidity and banality that SJWs are famous for. And it's usually the process of holding conversations with SJWs that makes people want to drink bleach afterwards.
You claim to be proponents of rational, logical, evidence-based argumentation. That's great. That's entirely laudable. But when I look at your online activity, when I look at, I don't know, for example, your Twitter feed, that's often not what I see. How do you reconcile this claim to be evidence-based and rational and logical against stuff like, oh, I was just trolling you, oh, I was just shitposting, or TLDR?
Why are you looking on Twitter to find stimulating commentary on real-world issues? You know, man, based on all the things I've heard people say about you, I kind of figured you were smarter than that.
No, seriously? What is it with you people and skulls?
I could hand them all skinless corpses if you want. Want to volunteer?
Are you aware that the ridiculous buzzwords you helped to popularize, like SJW and cuck and regressive, have all lost whatever meaning they once had, and only serve now as casual insults and pejoratives to derail any meaningful conversation?
Do you have even an inkling of an idea how horribly you people have abused and mutilated words like racist, misogynist, sexist, and rape? Do you have any clues just how many conversations have been derailed as a result of people spouting these words with such nonchalance? It really says a lot that you care way more about words that were either completely made up in recent years or heavily embellished than words with long storied histories of having one single definition, words that are incredibly important to real-world issues, that have been contorted into weapons for people like you to use in order to demonize men and white people. Does any of that bother you whatsoever?
For the last time, what is it with you people and committing actual literal felonies?
What is it with you people and being in favor of imprisoning men who are falsely accused of rape?
In videos and in the comment sections, anti-feminists often take up the most extreme or the weakest feminist position they can find, or they just straight up misrepresent what the feminist position is. Instead, why not take up the strongest, most robust feminist argument you can find and really challenge yourself?
There's a lot of problems with this question. First of all, anti-feminists cannot be misrepresenting feminists because 98% of all known feminists preach ideas and beliefs that are malevolent and hateful towards men. If you can point me in the direction of a group of feminists who actually go out of their way to try to help and protect men with the same kind of diligence as they would for women, who are not laughed at and ostracized by all other feminists the same way Christina Hoff Sommers, Camille Paglia, or Ayaan Hirsi Ali are, then please do so. Secondly, how am I or anyone else in opposition to feminism supposed to be able to tell what the most robust feminist position is? What is the standard for which feminists are worth criticizing and which ones are not? It's my experience that no matter how nice a feminist's video looks, how nice they look, or how big their vocabulary is, they still spout the same poisonous garbage as even the most trashy, repulsive, and low budget of SJWs. They all still talk about the patriarchy, the false rape statistics, the fictitious wage gap, male privilege, toxic masculinity, rape culture, and etc., etc. These are all the most robust aspects of feminism, Christy, and they have been analyzed and destroyed by rational people time and time again.
I am deeply concerned with male addiction rates, suicide rates, and abuse rates, because I have worked with these issues in the quote-unquote real world.
And yet you never actually talk about any of these things. I know this because I've actually watched a fair amount of your videos, Chrisiosity. There's a difference between saying you care about these things and actually, showing it.
Would you be willing as anti-feminists to put aside your differences with feminists for the greater good of addressing these issues, especially as the kind of solutions needed are not necessarily gendered? And if so, I would actually like you to let me know, because I'm not fucking around or presenting any gotchas here. I actually really think that we could get something done if we work together. So, yeah.
If feminists would learn to stop calling people racist or sexist and learn to stop telling people how victimized they are, then yes, I would be all for uniting to help the world. But as long as these habits remain unbroken, I would never entertain the thought of sharing the same physical presence as you, let alone work together. You're not going to help people by telling them how privileged or victimized they are all the time.
What is third wave feminism? Because I've often heard you folks insist that you have no objection to feminism in general. It's specifically third wave feminism that you have a quarrel with. So what is third wave feminism specifically? And what specifically about third wave feminism do you have such a problem with?
I have a better question, Steve. What makes you think you know enough to ask us anything when you have never in your life actually spoken to one of us?
Why is it that this feminist represents all feminists, but this men's rights activist doesn't represent all men's rights activists?
Whoa, wait, sexism all of a sudden? Ladies and men are different? So we're supposed to punch men and not hit ladies and open doors for men, but not ladies? Fuck you, get out of my face, you tiny piece of shit.
Well, Trigglypuff is an icon that represents every bad thing about the regressive left, not just feminists. That MRA inside that McDonald's, assuming of course he is a men's rights activist, is the only annoying and insufferable MRA I have actually seen. You people talk non-stop about how men's rights activists are the most insecure crybabies in the universe, but almost always you fail to point out any specific MRAs who you think fit that description.
Why am I continually asked to answer for the views of feminists if I agree with feminism's overall aims, but don't agree much with those particular feminists? Does that mean that I can ask you to answer for anybody who labels themselves similarly to you, even if you don't agree much?
Nope. Sorry, doesn't work that way. Feminists are a definite group who talk constantly about attaining equality between men and women. When you decide to appoint yourself as a part of this group, but you remain silent about the members of the group who do things that are antithetical to what the group is supposedly about, that makes you look very corrupt and shady. And it also completely muddies the waters on what the purpose of the group is supposed to be. Most people who oppose feminists are not part of any group. They are simply people who don't like feminism, so they don't have to answer for shit.
If SJWs are bad because they spend too much time whining and don't talk about real problems, then why aren't you talking about those problems instead of just whining about the other people over and over and over for literally years? I mean, in the scale of priorities, that's like even lower, right? You know, you've got the real problems, you've got the things that feminists worry about, and then you've got you going, how dare they? Just, how dare they have different priorities from me? Why can't they do what I do? Whine about whining forever for a living. That's healthy.
Well, congratulations, asshole. By bringing this point up, you have officially put yourself and every other person in this video at the very bottom of this arbitrary little list you have created. Well done.
Why don't you seem as concerned with actual feminist theory in academia as you are with wrecking people for views?
Because most people who wreck feminists for views do not like feminist academia? Did that thought not cross your mind?
Since so many of you profess to be admirers of second-wave feminism as opposed to third-wave feminism, I thought it would be interesting to ask which second-wave feminists in particular do you appreciate? Which books written by second-wave feminists have you read and found interesting? Which second-wave feminist activists have you specifically admired as you formed the opinion that you like second-wave feminism but you have no use for third-wave feminism? I'm just curious.
I think some people strongly prefer the first two waves of feminism because they actually accomplished shit. Just please tell me one good thing that third-wave feminism has actually done.
You do understand that reading the title of a book or an article or watching the first 15 seconds of a video is not going to give you a deep, nuanced understanding of what that book or article or video is about, right? That being said, how can you expect to understand or critique feminist sources if you don't even attempt to understand what they're trying to say?
How do you think I'm actually making this video right now? Do you not actually think that I'm watching these videos in order to criticize them? What, do you think I'm like Jor-El from the Superman movies, that I just made an artificial intelligence of myself designed to answer every possible question in existence, regardless of context? Just because you don't like the things we said, it doesn't mean we didn't watch or read the thing ourselves, you moron.
Why is trying and failing to debunk a study into sexual assault the #1 priority for a rational thinker now? Does it maybe say something about your priorities? Does it maybe? Nah, it's fine, it's the feminazis, we have to stop them. They're taking away our video games. Look, Anita, I'm sorry, but we can't actually destroy video games. That doesn't make any sense.
What the fuck did I just watch? That was some of the most piss-poor comedic delivery I've ever seen.
One of the major arguments that I see in many of your videos is that it is possible to separate criticism of the religion of Islam from the actual Muslim people. And yet, this line seems to be crossed very often. I see things like raghead or camel fucker or other things like that in your comment sections. I see people taking very serious shots at Muslims in videos and hangouts, and they don't get called out. Or At least not that I can see. So my question is this: why should a person of conscience who is concerned about the Muslim people in their community not being harmed or mistreated, why should they believe that you're actually only attempting to look at the ideas and talk about the ideas if you ignore bigotry that's occurring right in front of you? And in that light, would you be willing to break bread and salt with moderate Muslim people on your videos, have hangouts, invite them to your channels, just in order to build some bridges there and to learn more about what they think and how they feel and what their experience has been, so that information and knowledge can be furthered?
Nobody has the time to address every single comment they get. As a video maker yourself, you should know this. As for your second point, we do hang out with Muslim people. A little while back, I saw Naked Ape hang out with an ex-Muslim YouTuber guy named The Pharaoh, so I don't know where you're getting that idea.
Do you deny that systemic racism against black people is like a thing?
It's not any more of a thing than systematic racism against white people or any other ethnicity. There are lawmakers and people of power out there who don't like black people. Yes. But that doesn't mean that overall the system is designed to be racist towards black people. You can make that argument towards any other race. It doesn't fucking prove anything.
If so, what? Okay, just step over. Just cover your ears for a second and let the smart people talk.
Aw, isn't that cute? You think your position is the smart one.
If not, why is it so much more important to you to demonize groups like Black Lives Matter than to actually use your platforms to discuss actual solutions to issues surrounding race and racism?
Because a majority of racist atrocities that take place in this country nowadays are committed by Black Lives Matter. Fucking Christ.
If you've ever discussed or done a video about black on black crime, when are you going to do a video about white on white crime?
When there is a White Lives Matter movement, then I probably will.
And what we, as white people, can do to solve the problems in our community.
If there was a White Lives Matter movement blaming everything on cops and black people today instead of the opposite, then you might have a point.
Why is a literal teenager's different definition of racism from you so horrifying that—
You might find this hard to understand, but I think it's because most white people don't like to be called racist. I know, shocking.
Wherever did you get the idea that racism was a self-applied identity? And if the only true racists are the racists who self-identify as racists, how can we ever expect to make any social progress to reduce racism? Or did I just answer my own question?
This question is complete nonsense, due to one reason alone. Racism is not an identity, it's a label. Nobody self-appoints themselves as a racist. You see, Steve, this is why you should have never been a part of this video. You have no goddamn idea what you're talking about. Because, as I've said before, you've never actually spoken to one of us.
You often say that you are for equality of opportunity, but if people of color, for instance, have to overcome barriers whites do not, such as discrimination and unequal treatment, as are well documented in various studies.
They're so well documented you didn't even bother to share any of these studies.
Then how can the current situation be thought of as equal opportunity in any real way?
Because it is illegal to discriminate against people on the grounds of equal employment, pay, or education based solely on their skin color.
And why do you consider it racist to discuss these issues?
It's not considered racist to discuss these issues. It's considered race baiting. In other words, you're bringing up people's races when it is uncalled for.
Do you understand basic English syntax? Like, you know, if I say this cat is pretty, I don't mean that all other cats aren't pretty. Like, do you really not get why saying all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter is not only racially insensitive, but just patently ridiculous?
Your analogy is horribly flawed, because all lives matter does indeed encompass black people. If black people were not considered a part of All Lives Matter, then it wouldn't be called All Lives Matter, would it? That is also the mother of false comparisons, talking about how pretty a cat looks. It's not the same as talking about the ethnicity of people who are attacked by police.
Isn't it offensive to men to assume that a man could only ever want equality for women, and therefore be comfortable with feminism as a whole in order to get laid, and that reduces us to beasts? If that was the case, wouldn't I attempt to get laid from my views instead of not ever trying that?
Are you aware of the fact that some women who are staunch enemies of feminism are accused by feminists of only doing so because they want men to fuck them?
If you say you're an egalitarian, will you call out the man-hating slurs that you see coming from people within your community? People who use terms like cuck, beta male, faggot, or mangina? All of these things basically distill men down into thinking that the most important thing about them is to be having sex with a woman. That's rather offensive. So what are you doing to stop this kind of behavior in your community?
If you consider yourself a feminist who wants to fight for the comfort and liberty of women everywhere, are you ever going to acknowledge the parasites in your community who demonize and attack women who abandon or disagree with feminism by telling them that they have internalized misogyny or that they are sock puppets for the patriarchy? Or, as I just mentioned, only say things that they say because they want sexual attention from men? What are you going to do to quell the number of scumbags who do that in your community? Another thing, all of those slurs you mentioned are not thrown at feminist men because they are men. They are thrown at feminist men because they are insufferable, petulant, abrasive pieces of shit, pretty much in the same way as all of the men in this video.
What is the number of followers, the number of likes, the number of dislikes, the number of retweets, the number of subscribers, any of those numbers, any of those metrics, what have they got to do with the argument? Deepak Chopra, for example, a man who trots out an endless stream of pseudoscientific quantum woo bollocks, has nearly 3 million followers. So what? Those people follow him because he tells them what they want to hear. Why even mention the number of followers you have? What difference does it make?
Why is this question even in this video? This has basically fuck all to do with anti-SJWs or social justice issues in general. This is something that's prevalent with basically any internet entity out there. Here's an idea. Maybe next time you can ask a question presenting a pertinent argument instead of just patronizing all the people that this question was intended for, pretty much like you're doing right now.
Why is it that you go on and fucking on about safe spaces and trigger warnings and delicate little flowers, but continue to hide behind your cartoon avatars and your...
Why aren't you asking this to the two people in this video who are using cartoon avatars? I really gotta hand it to you folks. Nobody in the universe does hypocrisy better than you.
Your childish pseudonyms, and whenever anyone calls you out on your sexist, racist, homophobic, bigoted rhetoric, you become the argument of your own scorn and are hashtag triggered.
Do you have some examples of this? If holding your ground in a civil debate with someone who has expressed a disagreeing opinion on one of your videos is what you consider being triggered, then you're a complete scumbag.
Are you willing to publicly acknowledge and admonish the massive amount of hatred, bullying, harassment, and intimidation that a lot of your fans infringe upon people? And I don't mean these tiny disclaimers that you put under the description fold or flash for 2 seconds at the beginning of the video that you know nobody reads. I mean a public and ongoing anti-bullying stance. Or do you kind of like watching your fans go around harassing people and calling them slurs and telling them to kill themselves? You kind of like it, don't you? I mean, if that's your thing, I guess that's just what you're into. Just makes you a dick.
Are you willing to continually acknowledge and disparage the countless examples of SJWs who do terrible shit to undeserving people day in and day out? If not, then I kindly suggest you grow a pair and learn to deal with negative reception on the internet. I am not excusing the actions of trolls, but at the same time, it is common knowledge that the internet possesses an abundance of trolls. So if you are going to put yourself in the spotlight on the internet, you need to learn to endure the inevitable bullying and spam that will occur. Getting a shitload of dislikes and negative comments on a video you made from anti-SJWs is pretty mild and insignificant compared to being attacked and killed in the streets and killing yourself due to false rape allegations, all of which are sparked and perpetrated by SJW vermin like you.
Why do you find it so hard to believe that feminists are being harassed online?
I don't find it hard to believe at all that feminists endure harassment on the internet. The idea that they don't bring said harassment upon themselves, however, that is the one that I perceive with utmost skepticism.
Do you understand the key importance of reproducibility and repeatability in scientific research? That simply going to Google Scholar, doing a 30-second search for keywords and pulling out the first paper you find that backs up your stance is not a particularly credible way to do research. That you have to have a much broader overview, to read the material, to follow the citations through, to look at the broad brush approach to a particular problem. You do realise that you're as much of a social justice warrior as those you critique. It's just that you espouse a different form of social justice, a rather less considerate, rather less forgiving, rather less kind form of social justice.
I don't think it's physically possible to front a less kind of variety of social justice than the variety that you people are in support of. But I do have to admit to the irony on display here, since this question perfectly applies to the people whose side you have taken in this discussion. They are the ultimate shepherds of nonsense and bullshit ideas that have no true evidence to back them up. I can point you to a dozen of them if you want.
If you identify as an egalitarian, then I'm interested in your take on the usefulness of the concept of the original position as laid out by John Rawls in his theory of justice.
What do these two things have to do with each other exactly?
As a supporter, as a proponent of freedom of speech, why do you want to quash academic freedom? If you're not familiar with the concept of academic freedom, it's worth, in the UK at least, looking up the 1988 Education Reform Act and seeing what that says about the rights of academics to put across unpopular opinion.
I'm assuming by quashing academic freedom, you mean the actions taken to try to get rid of social justice courses? This doesn't really count as quashing academic freedom or quashing any type of freedom. Because social justice courses are poisonous and unhealthy for society. Any college class that teaches that all men are potential rapists or that all white people are by default racist is not good for society. Getting rid of these classes isn't stamping out any freedom in the same way that getting rid of the Jim Crow laws wasn't stamping out anyone's freedom. When a freedom that someone enjoys involves completely inhibiting the freedom of another person or group of people, that is not the type of freedom that any decent person or entity should strive to support.
Why are you so obsessed with Anita Sarkeesian?
Because Anita Sarkeesian is one of the central figureheads of third-wave feminism, not to mention she is, without question, the most laughable critic of the video game medium since Jack Thompson.
Do you really think you can spend your entire life in a perpetual state of emotional immaturity? Do you actually imagine that you will be able to perpetuate your adolescence for your entire existence? Wait, didn't somebody else ask this one? Wait, I gotta... Ah, fuck.
And on that immensely unfunny note, I believe I will end this video. I sincerely hope you all enjoyed this video in particular. I had a hell of a good time writing and editing it. Take care, and hunt well.